The doorbell rang at 6:43 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday in Norfolk, Alabama. James Winters, a 44-year-old auto mechanic, opened his front door to find 4 FBI agents and local police standing on his porch. Neighbors peered through curtains as the man they'd known for decades, a Little League coach and regular at the local diner, was led away in handcuffs. James Winters, you're under arrest for the kidnapping and murder of Lisa Montgomery. After 22 years of silence, a killer's perfect crime had finally unraveled. The date was October 12, 2023, and a cold case that had haunted Norfolk since 2001 had just blown wide open. Lisa Montgomery was the girl everyone rooted for, brilliant, determined, and beating the odds. The eldest daughter of a single father, she'd earned a full scholarship to Norfolk State University's prestigious psychology program. With dreams of becoming a clinical psychologist, Lisa balanced classes, a campus job, and volunteer work at the Community Crisis Center. Her professors described her as exceptional, someone destined to make a difference in people's lives. But on September 15, 2001, just 4 days after the nation was focused on the tragedy of 9/11, Lisa Montgomery disappeared from a campus parking lot after a late-night study session. In the chaos of that historical moment, her case received less attention than it deserved. By the time authorities realized the seriousness of her disappearance, critical evidence had already gone cold. For 22 years, the question remained, what happened to Lisa Montgomery? Today, we finally have answers. Before we dive deeper into this shocking case, if you're fascinated by true crime investigations and the power of forensic science to solve decades-old mysteries, hit that subscribe button and join our community of truth seekers. Now I'm curious, where were you in 2001 when Lisa Montgomery vanished? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Lisa Montgomery wasn't supposed to make it to college. Born to teenage parents in a struggling part of Norfolk, Alabama, her odds were stacked against her from day one. Her mother left when Lisa was just 4 years old, leaving her father, Robert Montgomery, to raise her and her younger brother alone. Lisa was the kind of kid who just refused to accept limitations, Robert would later tell investigators. Working 2 jobs as a warehouse supervisor and weekend security guard, Robert instilled a fierce work ethic in his children. The small family lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment where Lisa transformed the tiny dining room into her personal study space, plastering the walls with academic awards and inspirational quotes. By 16, Lisa had become the de facto parent to her brother, while maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA. Teachers at Lincoln High School quickly recognized her exceptional analytical mind and quiet determination. Her psychology teacher, Martha Wilson, recalls, Lisa had this remarkable ability to understand people, what motivated them, what scared them. She could read a room better than most adults. This natural talent led Lisa toward psychology. She wanted to understand why people do what they do. Her best friend, Tanya Williams, shared, especially what makes someone overcome trauma. I think because of her own life, she wanted to help others heal. When the acceptance letter from Norfolk State University arrived with a full academic scholarship, Robert framed it. It wasn't just Lisa's achievement. It represented a generational breakthrough. She would be the first in her family to attend college. Lisa arrived at Norfolk State in August 1999, immediately throwing herself into campus life despite being naturally introverted. She joined the Psychology Students Association and volunteered at the Campus Crisis Hotline by her 2nd semester. Professors noted her thoughtful questions and insightful papers. Dr. Marcus Johnson, head of the psychology department, kept a paper she wrote on childhood resilience factors. This was graduate-level analysis, he noted. Lisa had the kind of mind that could change the field. Though not one for parties, Lisa formed a tight-knit circle of friends. Her roommate, Denise Cooper, described their dorm room as half therapy office, half study hall. Lisa covered her walls with brain anatomy posters and psychology journal clippings. Her small desk featured just 2 personal items, a photo of her with her father and brother, and a small ceramic turtle, a gift from her absent mother on her 5th birthday. By September 2001, Lisa had settled into a precise routine. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays were for morning classes and afternoon shifts at the campus bookstore. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she volunteered at the Community Crisis Center. Weekends were split between study groups and calls home to check on her brother. She scheduled everything in a detailed planner, color-coded by priority. Lisa's career path was equally mapped out. After her bachelor's degree, she planned to pursue a PhD in clinical psychology, focusing on trauma recovery in underserved communities. She'd already begun researching graduate programs and connecting with potential mentors. The night before she disappeared, we stayed up late talking about the future, Denise later told police. She was excited about an internship opportunity at the county mental health clinic. She'd just aced her developmental psych midterm. Everything was falling into place. What no one knew was that Lisa had begun receiving strange phone calls in the week before she vanished. She mentioned them briefly to Tanya, hang-ups and breathing on the other end of the line. "I figured it was just typical college pranks," Tanya said. "Now I wonder if someone was watching her, learning her schedule." The Lisa Montgomery who disappeared on September 15, 2001, wasn't just a promising student. She was a daughter determined to make her father proud, a friend who listened more than she spoke, and a young woman with plans to heal others' invisible wounds. She carried both resilience and vulnerability, a combination that made her extraordinary and perhaps ultimately made her a target. September 11, 2001 changed everything in America. While the nation reeled from the terrorist attacks, life on Norfolk State University's campus, like everywhere else, had been thrown into chaos. Classes were temporarily suspended, televisions in dorms stayed tuned to news coverage, and students gathered in common areas, many trying to contact loved ones in affected areas. For Lisa Montgomery, the national tragedy coincided with a more personal disturbance. The strange phone calls had started 3 days earlier on September 8th. At first, they came to her dorm room landline, which she shared with Denise. "The first few times we thought it was just a technical glitch," Denise later told detectives. "Someone would call, but when we answered, there'd be silence, then a click. By the 3rd or 4th call, we could hear breathing on the other end." By September 12th, as classes cautiously resumed, the calls had escalated. Lisa's cell phone began receiving text messages from an unknown number. Simple, unsettling messages. "Watching you in the library today. Red sweater looks nice. Your 8 a.m. psychology class seems interesting. Do you always eat lunch alone on Wednesdays?" Lisa reported the messages to campus security on Thursday, September 13th, but the officer on duty filed it as a non-urgent harassment complaint. With the entire nation on high alert following the terrorist attacks, a student receiving strange texts barely registered as a priority. The timeline of Lisa's final 24 hours has been reconstructed through witness statements, security footage, and cell phone records. Friday, September 14th, 8:15 a.m. Lisa attended her abnormal psychology class 10:30 a.m. Security cameras caught her studying in the library 1:45 p.m. She worked her shift at the campus bookstore until 5 p.m., 6:20 p.m. Lisa called her father, their last conversation, 7:15 p.m. She met her study group at the campus coffee shop 9:40 p.m. The study group disbanded. Lisa mentioned needing to finish a paper, Saturday, September 15th, 12:15 a.m. Security footage showed Lisa leaving the library, 12:23 a.m. She texted Denise, "Heading back now, don't wait up." 12:27 a.m. Campus cameras captured Lisa walking toward parking lot, C 12:36 a.m. Lisa's car remained in the lot, but she never appeared on any other campus cameras 12:42 a.m. Her phone pinged a cell tower half a mile from campus, then went offline permanently. "That last text to me was so normal," Denise recalled. "I fell asleep waiting for her to come back. When I woke up Saturday morning and saw her bed empty, I figured she'd gone to the early breakfast they served before weekend study sessions." It wasn't until Saturday afternoon, when Lisa missed a scheduled video call with her brother, that alarm bells started ringing. Robert Montgomery called the dorm repeatedly. By 6 p.m., Denise had contacted campus security. The initial response was frustratingly casual. The officer suggested she might have gone off with friends without telling anyone, Denise said, as if Lisa would ever do that. By Sunday morning, with no sign of Lisa and her car still in the parking lot, Robert Montgomery drove the 3 hours to campus. His insistence finally triggered an official missing persons report. Campus security footage was reviewed, and a shocking discovery was made. Camera 12, overlooking the far corner of parking lot C where Lisa had last been seen, had been disabled between 12:30 a.m. and 1:15 a.m. on Saturday. Someone had deliberately created a 45-minute blind spot in the exact location where Lisa vanished. What investigators didn't realize and wouldn't discover for nearly 22 years was that a crucial piece of evidence had been collected but misclassified that very first day. A groundskeeper had found a silver charm bracelet near the parking lot drain and turned it into lost and found rather than to investigators. The bracelet, a gift from Robert to Lisa on her acceptance to college, featured a distinctive pendant, a miniature psychology textbook with her initials engraved on the spine. By Monday, September 17th, the campus erupted into a frantic search operation. Students formed search parties, canvassing wooded areas surrounding the university. Flyers with Lisa's photo appeared on every lamppost and bulletin board. Local news stations, still predominantly focused on 9/11 coverage, gave Lisa's disappearance brief mentions during evening broadcasts. But as days stretched into weeks with no sign of Lisa Montgomery, a disturbing reality set in. The promising psychology student with the detailed 5-year plan had vanished without a trace, and someone had carefully planned for exactly that to happen. By Monday, September 17, 2001, the Norfolk Police Department officially took over the investigation from campus security. Detective Marcus Rollins, a 15-year veteran of the force, was assigned as lead investigator, a case that would eventually define his career. "We were operating at a disadvantage from the start," Rollins later admitted in a 2018 interview. "Those first 48 hours are critical in any missing persons case, and we'd already lost them due to the initial classification as a non-emergency." The investigation faced unprecedented challenges. The national focus on terrorism following 9/11 meant resources were stretched thin. Many FBI agents who might normally assist had been reassigned to terrorism task forces. Additionally, the technology available to investigators in 2001 was primitive by today's standards. We had no widespread surveillance cameras beyond the campus system. Cell phone tracking was basic. We could identify which tower pinged her phone last but couldn't pinpoint its exact location, explained Rollins. Social media didn't exist, so we couldn't track her digital footprint or easily spread information about her disappearance. The investigation initially focused on 3 theories. First, that Lisa had voluntarily disappeared, quickly dismissed due to her character, the abandoned car, and the disabled security camera. Second, that she had been targeted by a stranger, possibly someone who had spotted her routine of late-night studying. Third, that someone in her life had a hidden motive, leading investigators to scrutinize everyone close to her. The earliest suspect was Derek Walters, a teaching assistant in Lisa's developmental psychology class. Several students reported he had shown special interest in Lisa, offering private tutoring sessions and twice asking her to coffee, which she had declined. "We looked hard at Walters," Rollins noted. His alibi for that night initially seemed shaky. He claimed to be home alone watching movies until 2 a.m. However, a neighbor confirmed seeing his car parked at his apartment complex all night, and security footage from a nearby gas station showed him buying snacks at 11:30 p.m., making it unlikely he could have been at the campus parking lot an hour later. The investigation then turned to Lisa's ex-boyfriend from high school, Marcus Jenkins. They had dated for nearly 2 years before amicably breaking up when Lisa left for college. Marcus had visited her on campus twice in her freshman year. Jenkins had a solid alibi, Detective Rollins said. He was working an overnight shift at the hospital in Birmingham, 150 miles away. Multiple co-workers verified his presence, and hospital security footage confirmed it. By November 2001, investigators had interviewed 47 people, collected 28 DNA samples, and searched wooded areas within a 5-mile radius of campus 3 separate times. They'd analyzed Lisa's computer, phone records, and banking activity. Nothing yielded actionable leads. Perhaps most frustrating was the phone that had sent the disturbing messages. It was a prepaid cell phone, purchased with cash at a convenience store 30 miles from campus. The store had no security cameras in 2001. The phone had only been used to contact Lisa and was never used again after her disappearance. It was like chasing a ghost, Rollins admitted. Someone who knew exactly how to stay invisible, even back then. Before we continue with this baffling investigation, I'm curious. What's the weather like where you're watching from today? Drop it in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where our community tunes in from around the world. If you're finding this case as compelling as I did while researching it, take a second to hit that like button and ring the notification bell. It helps tremendously with the YouTube algorithm and ensures you won't miss the next part of this incredible story. Trust me, what happened next in this investigation will leave you speechless. When the Norfolk Police Department officially classified Lisa Montgomery's case as cold in June 2002, they delivered the news to Robert Montgomery in person. Detective Rollins and his captain sat in Robert's modest living room, explaining that without new evidence they couldn't justify dedicating full-time resources to the investigation any longer. Robert listened silently, then responded with 6 words that would define the next 18 years of his life. Then I'll do it myself. Watch me. The next morning, Robert took the first of what would become thousands of actions in his relentless search for his daughter. He withdrew $12,000, his entire savings, and hired a private investigator. He transformed Lisa's childhood bedroom into what he called the war room, with timeline charts, maps, and photos covering every wall. He reduced his work hours to part-time, surviving on minimal income to dedicate himself to finding Lisa. Robert was the most determined individual I've ever encountered, said Marla Stevens, a victim's advocate who began working with the Montgomery family in 2003. He taught himself investigation techniques, criminal psychology, and eventually even forensic science. He became an expert in his daughter's case when everyone else was moving on. By 2004, Robert had appeared on 3 national news programs, created a website dedicated to Lisa's case, and distributed over 15,000 flyers across 5 states. Every 6 months he would arrive at the Norfolk Police Department with a folder of new information, potential leads, or questions about aspects of the investigation he felt were overlooked. Some detectives found him annoying, admitted former Police Chief Daniel Harper, but others were impressed by his methodical approach. He wasn't just a grieving father making noise, he was doing legitimate investigative work. The toll on Robert was immense. His marriage to his second wife ended in 2006, unable to withstand the strain of his single-minded focus. His son, Michael, struggled with the dual trauma of losing his sister and then watching his father disappear into the investigation. Dad was physically present but mentally always with Lisa, Michael explained in a rare interview in 2015. I understood it, but it was hard. For years, our dinner conversations were only about leads, theories, and suspects. Robert's health deteriorated as well. He developed high blood pressure, insomnia, and stress-induced digestive issues. Friends reported he aged 20 years in 5. Yet even when hospitalized briefly in 2009 for exhaustion, he conducted witness interviews by phone from his hospital bed. The methods Robert used to keep Lisa's case alive were innovative and increasingly sophisticated. He created anniversary events that local media could cover. He established a scholarship in Lisa's name at her former high school, ensuring annual mentions of her story. He strategically placed billboards along highways entering Norfolk during high-traffic holiday periods. Perhaps most effectively, Robert built relationships with law enforcement across the country, attending police conferences and training sessions open to the public. He became a known figure in missing persons circles, exchanging information with other families and advocates nationwide. Robert Montgomery knew more about cold case investigation than some detectives, noted Francine Waters of the National Center for Missing Adults. He could discuss DNA extraction methods or witness interview psychology with genuine expertise. His persistence yielded several critical breakthroughs. In 2007, his regular review of Lisa's phone records identified a pattern that investigators had missed. The stalking calls had begun exactly one day after Lisa had volunteered at a community mental health fair. This discovery expanded the suspect pool to include attendees and staff from that event. In 2011, Robert's consistent pressure led to a full evidence review using improved technology, resulting in partial fingerprints being recovered from Lisa's car that hadn't been detected in the original investigation. Most significantly, in 2017, Robert personally funded advanced DNA testing on items from Lisa's dorm room, identifying trace evidence that didn't match Lisa or her roommate. This unknown DNA profile was entered into national databases, waiting for a potential match. Without Robert's actions, this case would have remained in a box in our evidence room, Detective Rollins acknowledged. His refusal to let Lisa be forgotten kept the investigation alive when institutional momentum had long faded. Through it all, Robert maintained Lisa's memory not just as a victim, but as a complete person. Each year on her birthday, he would volunteer at a mental health clinic, living out the career his daughter never got to pursue. He established a small library of psychology books at Norfolk State in her name. And every Christmas he bought a gift representing what Lisa might have achieved that year: a graduation cap, a professional psychology journal subscription, eventually items representing the career milestones she would never reach. "I'm not just looking for answers," Robert told a reporter on the 15th anniversary of Lisa's disappearance. "I'm making sure the world remembers who she was and what was stolen, not just from her, but from all the people she would have helped in her life." By 2019, most people expected Robert Montgomery would go to his grave without answers. No one anticipated what scientific advancement was about to change everything. When Lisa Montgomery disappeared in 2001, DNA technology was still in its relative infancy. The Human Genome Project had just published its first draft sequence months earlier. Crime labs could match DNA to a suspect, but only if that suspect's DNA was already in a database or collected for comparison. Without a suspect, DNA evidence often led nowhere. In 2001, we collected biological evidence from Lisa's car and dorm room, forensic technician Dr. Samantha Reeves explained. "We found several unidentified DNA samples, but with no matches in CODIS, the combined DNA index system. They were essentially dead ends. For 2 decades, those DNA samples sat in storage, first in standard refrigeration, then transferred to more advanced biopreservation systems as technology evolved. What investigators couldn't know was that the science needed to solve Lisa's case was developing in parallel fields not yet applied to forensics." The first major shift came in 2010, when next-generation sequencing dramatically reduced the cost and time required for DNA analysis. While traditional methods examined just 20 genetic markers, new technology could analyze hundreds of thousands. "It was like going from a magnifying glass to an electron microscope," Dr. Reeves said. "Suddenly we could see details that were always there but previously invisible." In 2018, the arrest of the Golden State Killer using investigative genetic genealogy revolutionized cold case investigations nationwide. This technique combined advanced DNA analysis with genealogical research, allowing investigators to identify suspects through their distant relatives. Robert Montgomery immediately recognized the potential. In January 2019, he approached Detective Rollins, now nearing retirement, with research on genetic genealogy and a proposal to retest the unknown DNA from Lisa's case. Robert had compiled a 47-page report on successful cold cases solved through this method, Rollins recalled. He'd even contacted the labs and gotten cost estimates. It was impossible to say no to that level of preparation. The Norfolk Police Department agreed to allocate funds from their cold case budget, supplemented by a grant Robert secured through a victim advocacy organization. In March 2019, the unidentified DNA samples from Lisa's case were sent to Parabon Nanolabs, a private company specializing in genetic genealogy for law enforcement. The process was painstaking. First, Technicians extracted and purified the decades-old DNA samples, then used advanced sequencing to develop a comprehensive genetic profile. This profile was uploaded to public genealogy databases where users had explicitly opted in to law enforcement matching. "We weren't looking for the suspect directly," explained genetic genealogist Dr. Eleanor Walsh, who worked on Lisa's case. "We were looking for distant cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone sharing enough DNA to help build a family tree that might lead to our unknown person." The initial results identified several distant relatives, third and fourth cousins of the unknown DNA contributor. Genealogists then began the meticulous work of building backward to common ancestors, then forward through all possible branches until contemporary descendants were identified. "It's like solving a massive puzzle where half the pieces are missing," Dr. Walsh said. "We constructed over 240 family trees, containing more than 5,000 individuals across 7 generations. By January 2023, the team had narrowed their focus to 3 family lines in the Norfolk area. Detectives began discrete background investigations on each family, looking for connections to Norfolk State University, Lisa Montgomery, or anyone who lived in the area in 2001. The breakthrough came on August 7, 2023. A name appeared at the intersection of genetic probability and circumstantial evidence: James Winters, a lifelong Norfolk resident who had worked as a maintenance contractor at Norfolk State University from 1999 to 2002. Investigators began surveillance, legally collecting discarded DNA samples, a coffee cup from a local diner, a napkin from a fast food restaurant. On September 29, 2023, the lab confirmed what they had suspected. James Winters' DNA matched the unknown profile from Lisa's car. What's astonishing is that Winters had been briefly interviewed during the original investigation as part of the maintenance staff canvass. He had provided an alibi that was never thoroughly verified, and without any obvious connection to Lisa, he hadn't remained a person of interest. Before we continue to the arrest and shocking confession, I'm curious, what time is it where you're watching this? Drop it in the comments below. It's amazing to think about how this technology that finally brought justice for Lisa didn't even exist at the time she disappeared, and now we're all here, connecting across different time zones, learning about how science finally gave her family answers. If this case has touched you the way it's touched me, please consider sharing this video with someone who appreciates how modern science is changing justice. Every share helps another family with a missing loved one discover that there's always hope for answers, even decades later. Hit that share button now. You might help bring attention to another cold case that deserves solving. The arrest of James Winters sent shockwaves through Norfolk. For 22 years, the man responsible for Lisa Montgomery's disappearance hadn't been hiding at all. He'd been living openly, coaching Little League, attending community events, and working as a respected auto mechanic. In the decades since Lisa vanished, Winters had married, had 2 children, and become a deacon at his local church. This is what makes these cases so disturbing, FBI Special Agent Kathleen Merritt explained. The perpetrators often don't fit our idea of what a murderer looks like. They build seemingly normal lives while carrying this dark secret. As investigators dug into Winters' background, the connection to Lisa finally emerged. In 2001, Winters had worked as a maintenance contractor at Norfolk State University, primarily handling after-hours emergency repairs in academic buildings. Campus records showed he had been called to fix a broken thermostat in the psychology building on September 8, 2001, the exact day Lisa began receiving strange phone calls. He noticed her that day, Detective Rollins explained. According to his later confession, he was immediately fixated. He accessed the student directory through the maintenance office computer and found her information. The digital trail, while primitive by today's standards, told the story. Winters had purchased a prepaid phone specifically to contact Lisa. Campus security badge records showed him accessing buildings outside his usual schedule, coinciding with Lisa's routine. Most damning, his maintenance log showed him reporting a repair to the security camera in parking lot C just hours before Lisa disappeared. The same camera that mysteriously went offline during the critical 45-minute window. The morning of October 12, 2023, a team of FBI agents and Norfolk police arrived at Winters' home. Neighbors described the surreal scene of the man they'd known for decades being led away in handcuffs. "I just can't believe it," said Margaret Thomason, who had lived next door to Winters for 15 years. "My children played in his yard. He fixed my car countless times. How could we not have known?" The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Candlelight vigils formed spontaneously outside the Montgomery family home. The Norfolk State University campus, where many faculty still remembered Lisa, established an emergency counseling center for alumni traumatized by the news. Most shocking was the speed with which Winters confessed once confronted with the DNA evidence. After initial denials during the first 3 hours of interrogation, the presentation of scientific proof broke his resistance. "It was like watching a mask fall away," said Detective Rawlins, who observed the confession. He had compartmentalized this crime so completely that when that wall came down, everything poured out. The details Winters provided were precise and disturbing, though mercifully they brought closure. He admitted to disabling the security camera and waiting for Lisa in the parking lot. When she approached her car, he claimed to be campus security responding to a reported break-in. Once she was close enough, he used a stun gun to incapacitate her. What followed cannot be detailed here out of respect for Lisa's family, but authorities confirmed that Lisa had likely died within hours of her abduction. Winters led investigators to a remote location in the Bankhead National Forest where, finally, Lisa Montgomery's remains were recovered on October 15, 2023. For Robert Montgomery, the news brought a complex mix of devastation and relief. "For 22 years, I woke up every day with a sliver of hope that Lisa might still be alive somewhere," he said at a press conference, his son Michael standing supportively beside him. "That hope is gone now, which brings its own kind of pain. But at least we know. At least we can bring her home." The prosecution moved swiftly. Given the overwhelming evidence and confession, James Winters accepted a plea deal of life imprisonment without possibility of parole, sparing the Montgomery family the trauma of a trial. In exchange, he provided full details of his crime and agreed to meet with FBI behavioral analysts to help prevent similar cases. On November 22, 2023, Lisa Montgomery was finally laid to rest in a private ceremony. Her memorial service the following day saw an overflow crowd of more than 800 people, former classmates, professors, and community members whose lives had been touched by her story over 2 decades. Norfolk State University posthumously awarded Lisa her psychology degree, accepting the thesis paper found on her laptop after her disappearance as her final work. The university also established the Lisa Montgomery Scholarship for students pursuing careers in trauma counseling and victim advocacy. "This was never the justice we wanted," Robert Montgomery said at the sentencing hearing. "True justice would have been Lisa living her life, helping others as she planned to do. But this is the justice we have, and after 22 years we accept it with gratitude to everyone who never gave up." The resolution of Lisa Montgomery's case has reverberated through law enforcement agencies nationwide, becoming a blueprint for approaching decades-old cold cases. In the months following Winters' conviction, the FBI reported a 28% increase in requests for genetic genealogy testing from local departments with unsolved cases. The Montgomery Protocol, as some agencies now informally call it, emphasizes preserving biological evidence indefinitely, regardless of storage challenges or perceived case solvability. What the Montgomery case proved is that no evidence is too old and no case is truly cold if the DNA has been properly preserved, explained Dr. Eleanor Walsh. "The science will eventually catch up to the evidence we collect today." In a direct response to Lisa's case, Alabama state legislators passed the Lisa Montgomery Act in March 2024, mandating advanced DNA testing in all unsolved violent crimes where biological evidence exists. 5 other states have introduced similar legislation, potentially affecting thousands of stalled investigations across the country. Lisa's legacy extends far beyond these policy changes. The psychology department at Norfolk State University now includes a required ethics seminar called The Montgomery Lecture, focusing on trauma-informed approaches to mental health. Each year, a student researcher receives the Lisa Montgomery Fellowship to study victimology and survivor support methodologies. Robert Montgomery, now 67, has transformed his decades of self-taught expertise into a new career. He serves as a family advocate for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, helping other families navigate the agonizing journey he endured. His war room techniques have been formalized into a family resource guide now used by victim advocates nationwide. Lisa would have wanted her story to help others, Robert explained. She was studying to heal people's psychological wounds. Now, in a different way than she planned, she's still doing that work. The Montgomery family established a foundation that funds advanced forensic testing for families of missing persons who cannot afford it. To date, they've helped resolve 7 cold cases, bringing closure to families who had waited between 11 and 34 years for answers. For those who knew Lisa, the justice delivered feels both insufficient and miraculous, a contradiction familiar to anyone who has lost a loved one to violence. The closure brought by scientific advancement doesn't erase 2 decades of pain, but it does provide a foundation for healing. Closure isn't really the right word, Michael Montgomery reflected at a recent foundation event. It's more like finally being able to turn toward the pain instead of having it follow you from behind, unknown and shapeless. Now we know. Now we can face it directly and eventually look beyond it. The Lisa Montgomery case stands as powerful testimony to the evolution of justice, how advances in DNA technology, combined with unwavering human determination, can bridge decades and deliver answers that once seemed impossible. It reminds us that behind every cold case file is a family still waiting, still wondering, still hoping for the call that finally came to the Montgomerys on that October morning. I'm curious, have you followed any cold cases that were finally solved years later? What impact did those resolutions have on you, even as an observer? Share your thoughts in the comments below. These conversations help keep attention on cases still waiting for answers. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of persistence and the importance of never giving up, please take a moment now to subscribe to our channel. Behind every video we create is the belief that bringing these stories to light helps honor victims, educates communities, and potentially generates leads in other unsolved cases. Your subscription directly supports our ability to continue this work, to continue telling these stories that matter. Because the truth is, somewhere out there right now, another Robert Montgomery is sitting in their own version of a war room, waiting for the scientific breakthrough or witness courage that will finally bring their loved one home. And by being here, by bearing witness to Lisa's story, you help ensure they won't wait alone.